Hey guys, it's Britt. Welcome to the very first episode of my podcast, Strength Personified. I am so excited about this. I've wanted to do this for a long time. I had a podcast where I read my book a while ago called The Hope Girl, and it fizzled out. I wasn't inspired, and I kind of lost my way shortly after my first book came out in 2018. So this episode, I really just kind of want to introduce myself to those of you who don't know who I am, or maybe those of you who have heard of me and you're not really sure what I'm all about. I'd like to just take this opportunity, my very first episode, to kind of share with you why I created this brand and why that is the title of my book and my life. I'm not going to tell my whole story, but I'll tell you enough of it to where you will be picking up what I'm laying down from here on out. My goal for this podcast is to share my perspective on different topics, but most importantly, to help people feel better about themselves and feel empowered to change their life. It doesn't matter what cards you've dealt, right? It matters what you do with them. And I think, if anybody's good at making the best lemonade out of the worst fucking lemons, it's me. So, so if you can already tell, I swear a lot. So if you're offended by the F word, this probably is not going to be the podcast for you, but I pride myself in authenticity. I do a lot of branding work, and I always tell people to talk on social media how they would talk to somebody in a coffee shop or their best friend at a bar. So you're going to get the bar rat, Britt, but that is my true and best self. Not the bar rat part, but the swearing like a bar rat part. Anyway, I'm kind of funny too. You guys, you'll get used to me. So my story is long, and I actually recently just had the opportunity to share it in person with a local motivational coach and speaker. Sharing my story is always an honor, anybody that will listen to it. So thank you for being here and listening to this right now. But it's also very draining. It's very hard. I find myself very drained emotionally and mentally with the next few hours or the next day or so, because it does take an emotional toll. I am very empathic. I feel every single feeling and every single vibe from every single human on earth. And that is a blessing because I can relate to people. I can feel what other people are feeling, and I can connect with them in a better way. But it's also a curse because, all of my feelings are magnified times 1,000. And anybody who knows me personally knows that I just have too many feelings. So my story revolves around my childhood was very traumatic. I had a wonderful mom until the age of 6, and she had a nervous breakdown. She didn't take care of her. She didn't do a lot of self-care, and she had a nervous breakdown, and she kind of transformed into this, monster, broken person. She was the executive director of a nonprofit organization, and this was in the early 90s. She was single. She had divorced my dad in 95, and we had a big, beautiful 5-bedroom home. I had 2 rooms. I had a room for all my stuff, like a playroom, and then I had my bedroom. We had a pool. I mean, it was like the cream of the crop in the early 90s for a single woman. She made a huge salary. I think what she made in 94, I remember hearing somebody tell me this, and this number's coming to my head right now, but she made $26 an hour as an executive director for a nonprofit organization locally. And that money back then for a single woman is like nuts. That was a lot of money for someone back then for a woman. So she was amazing. I mean, she traveled, she spoke, she wrote grants for the government. I mean, the woman was everything. And she wasn't just smart. She was brilliant. She was at the founding of the internet. I swear she would have been like Steve Jobs or something if she had never gotten sick. She just knew everything about computers the second they came out, and she taught seminars on how to use computers and how to email. And this is right when all this stuff was starting too. There was no Facebook, Snapchat, podcasting, cell phones. There was nothing like that. But she was incredibly intelligent. And I think everyone who knew her then says that. A lot of people that I know and respect today have said that my mother was one of the most brilliant people that they had ever met or had ever known, and that she had taught them something so valuable that they kept with them their whole life. So that was my mom. She wasn't just smart, like I said, she was crazy beautiful, and she was an amazing mom. Like, she was Mary Poppins. She shredded carrots outside to show me that the Easter Bunny was there, and sprinkled glitter all over my pillow for the Tooth Fairy, and had special handwriting for Santa, and waited until I fell asleep every Christmas Eve to go outside and jingle bells outside my window so I would hurry up and go look and see that Santa had come and read my note from him. She was magic personified. She really was. Not only was she talented creatively, she had a beautiful voice, a beautiful soprano voice. I don't know how she never got a record deal, honestly. She was amazing. She played the piano, she played the saxophone, musically talented, theatrically talented. I mean, this woman was like the total package, brilliant at writing and creative arts, but also math and science. I mean, she was amazing. Like, I don't know if you're picking that up, but this woman, I'm trying to paint you like the pillar of perfection, like on the cover of Home Goods magazine good, okay? Like, she could bake, she could cook, she was the mom that cut out the little shapes for sandwiches for me. I mean, literally, like, everything. The house was always spotless. You could eat off the floor. This was a woman. Successful career. So what the fuck happened to her, right? Like, how does someone like that go from being that, all of that, to dying on the streets of Pensacola, Florida, weighing 83 pounds because she was destitute and internally bleeding from ulcers that went untreated for years? How the fuck does that happen to somebody? And it's a lot longer of a story than that, but I obviously got into social work and mental health because I wanted to figure out what the fuck happened to her, and I wanted to see if I could help other people prevent that, and what, and I'll never know, truthfully, what led to her nervous breakdown. There's lots of stories. I've heard all kinds of things about why she had a breakdown and then why she ended up attempting suicide in 1997. She overdosed on her antidepressant medications that she had been put on after her breakdown, and she was pronounced dead on the scene when they found her in January. It was northeastern Pennsylvania in the middle of the woods, face down in the snow. They found her. They pronounced her dead, but then they put her in the ambulance and pumped her stomach and did all that stuff, and she came back. But the woman that came back was not my mom. She was weak, and she was sad, and she was weak and sad, and that just wasn't my mom. I don't think I ever saw my mom cry or show any kind of shred of any kind of depression or sadness, even from a young age. I never ever picked up on that. But the strongest people, the people that look the best on the outside, typically 9 times out of 10 are the worst on the inside. And that was my mom. I think she had a lot of internal demons that she battled, and she kept it together for as long as she could until she couldn't do it anymore and she broke. So I kind of have made it my life mission to help people not break, because I also broke. Long story, not too much shorter. In 1998, we lost our house. We lost everything. We had to move back in with my grandparents. Then we moved back in with my dad, and my dad was trying to take care of her. It was this whole thing. I was 8 at the time. And she picked me up on my last day of 3rd grade, and she took me to Pensacola, Florida for 5 years. Took me away from my family, lied to them. And this was before, there was internet, but there was not location, like there's payphones, like there was not cell phones. There was no way for anybody to do anything or know exactly where we were at any given time. So that was bad. I was having a great time at first because I was Florida. It was the beach. I loved the beach. The beach was our favorite place to vacation to. And I was like, this is awesome. I love to swim. There's a pool. Like, I mean, it was just great. But then, you know, her delusions kind of grew. She became very religiously preoccupied. She initially went to this church. We went to Pensacola, Florida for a reason. She found this revival online or on TV. She saw it, and she thought she was convinced that God was telling her to go there, and he was going to heal her. Heal her heart, heal her mind, heal her physical body. She had a lot of physical problems from a childhood illness that she had when she was little. And she was just convinced that was our purpose and that's what we were supposed to do. And it ended up getting really bad. You know, she was on disability after she lost her job from her breakdown. And she never got that renewed because she believed that doctors were the devil. And we ran out of money. She cashed in her retirement, which at the time was $26,000, which might not seem like a lot to anybody today, but back then that was quite a chunk of change. She blew through that in 6 months on what I don't fucking know. She bought me stuff to kind of shut me up and make me feel better, but then, I mean, everything ran out. We were evicted from our apartment that we lived in, and we lived in her car. I grew up in the back of a 1994 Pontiac Bonneville. So the first 2 years were okay, but after that, it just went from bad to worse, and very quickly, very rapidly. You know, we literally walked out of our apartment, left all of our stuff. She threw away most of my stuff because the devil was attached to it. And like all the pictures, like my whole childhood is gone. Okay. Everything. She got rid of everything. We had to leave our pets. She made me go I had 2 ferrets and a rabbit, and she made me go release them into the woods. That broke my heart because I love animals. I loved my ferrets. Their names were Flower and Faline. And it was awful. It was absolutely awful. So at this time, I'm probably 11. I would say I was 11. And yeah, we lived in our car. We slept at rest stops. We scrounged for change in parking lots, eat out of vending machines. We spent a lot of time in Barnes & Noble stores and Books A Million bookstores because they were big, air-conditioned. Florida's fucking hot. Her air conditioner, of course, didn't work in the car eventually. So, you know, sitting in the car was not fun. Sitting outside was not fun. So we spent a lot of time in bookstores, and I think that's truly what saved me. And that's why I remember sitting in Barnes & Noble thinking, I'm going to have a book here someday. Like, I'm going to write a book about this. Like, this is fucking crazy. And, you know, even at the time, you know, this person, I just kept hoping that super mom would come back. Like, she would wake up one morning and just be all better. And she's like, okay, we're going home now. Or, okay, I have a plan to figure it out. Or, oh, I'm going to get a fucking job because that's what people do to live and get money, you know? But it never happened. And, you know, we couch surfed for a while. We would stay with people, and then she would be really manic and delusional, psychotic, and we would be kicked out. And we hopped around. I dodged a dozen CYS caseworkers, children and youth caseworkers. I got very good at doing that. I made up a whole different identity. I made up different stories every day because I had to. Because all this time, I mean, I easily could have taken that 75 cents I found in a parking lot and put it in a payphone and called my dad or called my grandma or called someone, and I would have been on a plane in 24 hours. Like, they would have come got me. And I knew that. The whole time I knew that. But I didn't leave her because I just felt like I didn't understand what was wrong with her. But I knew there was something not right. And I felt like I was the only human on earth that could protect her and take care of her. I felt like she needed me. I felt responsible. I felt I was parentified at a very young age. You know, I felt like I owed it to her. You know, she always told me, even before she got sick, that, you know, it was you and me against the world, right? And so I just kept that mentality this whole time, right? So kind of the climax of the childhood trauma, you know, not that being homeless and starving and, you know, eating ketchup packets to survive and going weeks without a decent meal and months without a shower or place to sleep at a time wasn't bad enough. She ended up trading me to these men because she claimed that she was going to Mount Zion to pray. And the Lord told her to give me to these guys to take care of me while she was gone. And really what had happened was I believe that she sold me for sex at 13 years old for what I don't fucking know. I have no idea. But so I was trapped in a room with a dirty mattress on the floor for 6 days in the dark, being thrown around by like two men in there. At the time I swore there were 40, but now like I know 40-year-olds and they don't look that old. So like they were probably in their 30s. I don't know. I have no idea. So that was 6 days of hell. And that's kind of when I really started to contemplate suicide and thinking about dying, because all the while, like living on the street and being whatever I was fine. It wasn't fine, but like I didn't know any different at the time. Like I didn't know what it was like to have a room and go to school. That's another thing. I didn't go to school 4th through 8th grade. I did not learn a fucking thing. My last day was 3rd grade. Okay. Last day of school, the last grade I completed was 3rd grade, and I was 13, almost 14. So that's really when I started to think about dying, and I got really, really dark. And I prayed to die. Like I literally prayed to die. I remember like literally crying and like on my knees, because I was raised a Christian. I grew up in a Wesleyan church, which is very old school, church, singing hymns with my grandma, my grandmother, like my mom's whole side of the family is very, very devout Christians. And so I grew up going to Bible camp and going to church and Sunday school. Like I believed at the time. But the church that we were going to, it fucked her up. I just blamed all of that on that church. That just fucked her up. It was like a cult. But I remember praying on that dirty fucking mattress, like all the time, when I wasn't being used. 'Cause, at the time, like I was delayed in social understanding and education. I did read some books on like why I was bleeding, because I didn't understand that. Got my period when I was 10. Okay. And like having your menstrual cycle as a young teenager or a young preteen, when you're 10, first of all, like 10 years old. And like, having to go from using like pads and like sanitary napkins to like finding old newspapers out of garbage cans to use to wad up in your only one pair of underwear that you have to wash out in the sink at Barnes & Noble. Like that was bad, right? But I didn't even know what sex was. I knew like about parts and stuff, but I didn't understand what was happening to me. It was very awful, but it was, and I was just, I knew it was some form of abuse, but I didn't understand it was sexual trauma. I didn't understand sex trafficking. I didn't understand what was happening. It was very terrifying. I was very alone, and I really thought I was going to die on that mattress. I really did. And and the windows were, of course, like nailed shut or glued shut, or, and they were all dark, like the spray paint. I mean, it was literally like a fucking horror movie. It was a horror movie. And I remember just crying and praying, like, please just fucking kill me. Like, I remember like thinking about, man, if I run headfirst into that wall over there and I hit it hard enough, like, will it snap my neck, or will I pass out so I don't have to like deal with this? And then it was like day 3 or day 4, I think. I just shut off. Like I just shut off to all of it. It became like, it was like a game. Like if I didn't cry, if I didn't get upset, if I didn't wriggle around, and like I gave them no satisfaction at all. Like I was a fucking statue. And that is when I took my power back. But it was also when like the intimate part of me broke, I think. And I am 33 years old, and I don't think it's ever going to be right. I have serious issues intimately, and it's with sex assault victims. There's usually like one of two things happen, and I've done research. I've talked to other victims. Worse things have happened to other people. Like I am not doing this to make anyone feel sorry for me. Please let me be clear with that. But there's usually two things. One, you don't ever let anybody touch you, ever. Like, nobody, like, if somebody puts their hand on your arm and you freak the fuck out and punch them in the face. Or you don't give a shit. You let anybody touch you. Sex means nothing to you. And I went the latter. I'm not saying that I, like, am this huge whore, because I'm not. I do have respect for my body. I always have because of that. But I'm very desensitized to it, and I have been for years. And I think just, you know, after having a baby, I was like, oh, like, people have sex and, like, enjoy it? Okay, like, that's weird, because I just thought it was a thing that you did. Sex for me, because of this experience, has always been, I've always wanted stability, and I've always wanted comfort, and I've always wanted just somebody to be there, because my best friend, the only person I ever loved with my whole heart, fucking went crazy and sold me to men and then died on me. And I have just always wanted somebody to just be there. Like, what I craved was never physical. It was never sexual. And maybe that makes me really fucking broken, but whatever. But what I craved was somebody to hold my hand in the hallway, you know? Somebody to put their hand on my leg when you're driving, or put their arm around me in public, kiss me on the forehead. That's what I wanted. So I thought, well, I have to do this sex thing, and, like, okay, like, I'll do that, because if I did that, then I would get the hand holding and the forehead kisses and that stuff. So anyway, by day 6, you know, I had just shut off completely. I had turned to stone completely. And they eventually they opened the door, unlocked all the locks on the outside of the door. I heard them unlocking it, and I was like, well, okay, around 27, whatever, here we go. Bring it on, you stupid fucking assholes, you know. And they put me in the back. They put me back in their van, and they took me back to my mom. And I almost thought I had died at that point. I was like, I'm dead right now. I'm dead, and I'm going to the after. Like, this deliverance is me going to the pearly gates, because Jesus, I cannot do this anymore, you know. And everything changed after that. I grew very angry. I grew very cold. I grew very dark. I started to self-harm and self-mutilate, cut my arms. I cut my legs. I wrote awful, dark poetry about death, about dying, about funerals, about being alone and cold and the dark. My inner darkness really started to brew after that. And then, you know, I'm 14. I've been through all of what I just told you and more that I haven't. And I looked around, and I'm like, I saw families like having picnics in the park that we were sitting at for the day, and kids getting off the school bus and running to their mom and going shopping and getting new clothes. And here I am, I'm 14 years old. I'm living in the back of a fucking 1994 Pontiac Bonneville. It's 2000, right? I don't know what those 6 days were, but they were bad, and something broke inside of me that I didn't think ever would be healed or fixed. I hadn't been to school in 5 years. I didn't have a bed or a room or food. I was so hungry, and I was just done. And I think the final straw was what made me write the letter. I wrote a letter to my dad, and they ended up finding me and rescuing me, and I had to go through foster care, this whole thing. But the straw that broke the camel's back, it wasn't the 6 days. It was the day I wrote the letter. The day I wrote the letter, my mom, she was going through my stuff, and she found my notebook that I had stolen from Walmart. I was really good at stealing from Walmart because I was fucking hungry, and I needed to write down my feelings. So sorry, Walmart. I stole probably 18 to 20 cans of potted meat that were under $1, and a notebook that was 99 cents. I owe you. But she found my notebook full of all of my like poetry about dying and death and not wanting to be alive anymore. And she then like started to try to rebuke the devil out of me. And she wrapped, and this is it's not comical. It's not funny. None of this is funny. But she's a very little woman, very petite. I mean, the woman never weighed over 100 pounds. When she overate before we ran out of money and were destitute again, when we were in our apartment, she did gain a little bit of weight just because we ate like kings. We went and had lobster on the beach, and we just ate and ate and ate whatever we wanted all the time. That's likely where all the money went. But she was a very little woman. So she was always a size like 2'4", 2. And she was shorter than me. So I'm 5'6". She's probably 5'3" or 5'4". She's a little lady, okay? And very frail wrists from her childhood illness that kind of like ruined all the collagen in her bones. So she wrapped her little bony hands, her little bony arms like around my neck. And I'm taller than her, mind you. And I'm bigger. Like, I'm built like my fucking dad. Like, I did not get my mom's little petite frame. Like, I am a fucking coolie through and through. She wrapped her hands around my throat and said she was going to kill me if I wanted to die. And I literally, it was like, those memes where like somebody's holding their hand out and then like the kid is like pushing their head against it and like flailing their arms. It was kind of like that, right? But I just looked at her and I was like, you're a fucking joke. Like, this is a joke. Like, I'm not doing this anymore. Like, fuck you, Mom. Like, I really was like, I am fucking done with you. I have done all of this stuff for you, protected you, ran from the cops, ran from CYS, gave up my fucking inner innocence or whatever. Like, I'm fucking hungry. I'm dirty. This is disgusting. Like, and you're going to fucking try to kill me? Like, no, you don't even worry about me. Like, I'm out. Goodbye. And so I shut off another part of my emotions. I shut off that day. And I went to my friend's mom, and she always said, she's like, honey, I'm sorry. We were staying with them at the time as a friend in Alabama, which is very close to Pensacola. I went to my friend's mom that we were staying with, and she's like, I can't have your mom here anymore. Like, I don't feel like my kids are safe with her. And I was like, I get it. Like, they're probably not, and you're smart for doing that because you're a good fucking mom. I was like, and she's like, I'm so sorry. I don't want to do this to you, Brittany. Is there anything I can do? I said, yeah. You know what? Can you get a hold of my dad, or can you somehow? And I wrote a letter to my dad explaining everything that had been going on. And I had to get, whatever. Wrote this whole letter. And she's like, you sure you want me to mail it? I said, yes. Get me the fuck out of here, right? So I mailed the letter. And then, like the after shock sets in, or like the anger wears off, and you're like, fuck. And you like have instant regret, instant remorse. Like, it's like buyer's remorse. I had like writer's remorse. I was like, oh my gosh, I wish I could like stop the mail or something. So I wrote a retraction letter. I said, oh, Mom, I was just being a brat. Mom and I got in a fight. Everything's great. We're at the beach. Love you. Like whatever. I wrote a retraction letter immediately after I sent that, like the next day. And I told her to mail it, and she did. But it was too late because they already got the letter. The cops are already on it. My aunt's lawyers and like my whole family was like flies on shit with this. And they were like, we are bringing this kid home. Unfortunately, somehow, my mom still had custody of me at the time, and we were in Florida, and, my dad lived in Pennsylvania. He did not have custody. I don't even think, I would have to ask him, but I don't even think he had 50-50. I think Mom just had 100%. So he had, no leg to stand on. So this psychotic woman who's been, abusing me and neglecting me for 5 years has custody of me, and we had to actually go to court over this? Like, are you fucking kidding me? So I had to go to foster care. I got put in foster care for 2 months. That's a whole nother story. I'm not going to make this podcast about that experience because I could talk another half hour about that. But I went through foster care. I did the thing. And then the court date finally came. And they promised me they'd clear the courtroom. I had to have these weird supervised visitations with her. And it was awkward because there was cameras and social workers, and my grandparents came down, and they were trying to, and it was just it was the worst fucking experience ever. One of them. And so I go to court, and I sit down. My caseworker's prepping me. Her name was Shannon. I wish I could find her. I really do. I found the investigator that was on my case. Her name's Phyllis Gonzalez, and I'm going to interview her on this podcast. I connected with her on Facebook years and years ago, and I'm so it's weird. So I don't know if she knows Shannon or what happened to Shannon or where Shannon is, but I need to find her because she sat with me and she's like, okay, and she helped prep me. Like, it's going to be fine. You just have to kind of just agree or with a judge or disagree or, just say yes, no, and you have to tell the truth, whatever. I was like, okay, fine. Well, we walk in and there's my mom sitting in the fucking courtroom. They didn't clear the courtroom for me. So I had to sit up on the stand at 14 years old and testify against my fucking mom, whom I still loved. And this whole situation broke my fucking heart because I knew then in that moment that I was not going to see her again. I knew she was going to die. I knew it. I knew if I left her, she would die because there's nobody else on the face of this fucking planet that would deal with her. But I made the first selfish decision of my life at 14 years old. And I was like, I want to go home. Just please send me home. I want to sleep in a bed. I want to eat dinner every day. I want to go to school and learn stuff and have friends and play softball and be in sports and be normal. Like, I felt so fucked up. I just wanted to be normal and maybe find a cute boy to kiss me on the forehead. Like, that's what I wanted. And so I testified, and then I think it was like literally the next day or the day after, I was put on a plane and sent from Pensacola International Airport to Scranton Airport, and my dad was there. And I mean, I'm going to do a whole series on this, like different aspects of my story, but that was my childhood. Okay. So fast forward really super fast. 2008 rolls around. I'm in college. I graduated high school on time, despite missing 5 years of school. I got accepted into college and graduated college in 2011 on time, with my degree in social work because I was hell-bent on helping kids not have to go through that with their fucking mom, right? Like, I'm going to be a social worker and I'm going to be a caseworker like Shannon was. I'm going to save the whole fucking world, right? Well, 2008, back up a little bit. I was a sophomore in college, and I had learned that my mother had passed away. And she was found destitute, 83 pounds, streets of Pensacola, Florida, internally hemorrhaging for all of her bleeding ulcers that she never took care of her whole life because she hadn't been to the doctor in, at this point, almost 10 years. So I internalized that, obviously. I knew it was my fault because I left her and she died. That's like, firmly believed that. But, I'm very good at shutting off and shutting down and pushing things aside and pushing through because that's just what I fucking do. I felt like that was just my mission, right? Like, strength personified here. Like, that's what I'm supposed to do with my life. Like, I'm just supposed to go through really hard shit and painful shit and just keep getting through it and just turn into stone one day. Like, I'm literally going to be a statue. That's what I'm going to be. And I planned her funeral and buried her, and I went back to school in 2 weeks, and I finished out my degree, and I got my dream job, moved home, and then ended up all of the things that I had never dealt with and I had shoved down and I had just pushed through. I never processed or fell. I didn't go to a single fucking therapy session ever. Because Brittany's amazing. She's great. I had I was kind of weird in ninth grade, but I mean, by my senior year, I was a basketball cheerleader and I had like a shitload of friends and, I was partying it up, popular. I guess I wasn't like prom court popular, but I had a lot of friends and I got along with pretty much everyone. And I loved it. I loved it. That I fucking did it. It was like a big fuck you to my mom. I was like, you know what? I didn't need you anyway. Like, I did it by myself. Like, I got what I wanted finally. But I had never dealt with all that trauma. All of it. Never. And her death was kind of like the beginning of the end for me. Mentally, I really started to drink a lot heavier. And yeah, I was in college, whatever. But I really abused food. Really abused alcohol. Super addicted to food. As comfort and alcohol as comfort. I didn't really get into drugs, thankfully, but, I just tried to numb myself to make it go away, but, that doesn't really work. I hope you guys know that is not proper coping. I thought therapy was for pussies and I didn't need to go, and fuck that. I went to the mandatory sessions that the school offered, but that's all I went to because I had to return back to class to make sure I was like okay. And I just bullshit my way through it and it was fine, whatever. So, fast forward again to 2011, I graduated, moved home. 2012, I got my dream job. And then I realized I hate my dream job. And then things just started overflowing. I talk about, when I share my story, when I speak, I talk about this rug. You have this rug, if you brush the dirt under the rug or the crap under the rug, it doesn't go anywhere. It's still there, but you won't notice it at first. There's a little dust, no big deal. But if you do that consecutively for your whole fucking life, and you go through significant trauma like that, you will literally end up making such a big pile under it, you don't even realize it's there, and you're going to turn around one day and you're going to fucking fall flat on your face because you're going to trip over it. And that's exactly what I did. I became super depressed, stopped showering, and coming from somebody who was homeless her entire childhood and smelled awful most of the time, showering is like a religious experience for me. Okay, I love to shower, I love to be clean. I shave my legs every freaking day, because I'm so grateful to have a shower still to this day at 33. Every day I get in the shower and I'm so thankful that I have hot water and a shower and soap. Wow, that's fucking great, because I know what it's like to go 3.5 years without it. Sucks. So, I stopped showering. I stopped doing all my ADLs, as they call it, activities of daily living. It's a social work term, casework term. I really just shut down, and I was so distraught, and I just cry for no, over and cry and cry and cry and cry. And I was never on any medication. I was never on any antidepressants. But I was just so I couldn't even explain it. It didn't even make any sense. If somebody asked me what was wrong, I literally could not tell them. I have no fucking clue. I have a boyfriend. I have an apartment. I have a job. I have a really good job. Everything, I have friends. What's wrong? I literally don't fucking know. I have no idea what's wrong. So I was feeling this way for a few weeks, but I didn't know what to say. I was how do you, and I always feel comfortable going to my dad. My dad is the most important man in my life, and he is the reason why I am talking to you on this podcast right now. And if you're listening, Dad, I'm sorry. I know this is hard for you to hear, but God damn it, I love you. But I didn't even feel like I could tell him because I didn't know what to say. I'm really sad. Why? I don't know. But it was all that unresolved trauma. It was that big, huge ass pile of dirt under that fucking rug that I just didn't clean up. And I was starting to trip and fall. And I just became so enclosed in this darkness. I talk about rock bottom's basement floor. It's musty and cold and dark, and it smells down there, right? And it's awful. And there's no windows, there's no doors, there's no rays of light. It just gets darker and damper and colder. And you just kind of lay down and you give up. And I did. And I was just how am I gonna and I was just replaying everything in my life. I'm everything is so hard. What is gonna give? What do I have to do? What do I have to go through in order to get to the other side, to be happy, to be healthy, to be happy? What does that even mean? I don't know. And I just didn't want to do it anymore. I was so distraught. I didn't get out of bed for days. I was eating Ativan because I went to the emergency room twice. And fuck the emergency room for this, by the way. Not once did any of them ask me if I was feeling committing suicide, because if they had, I likely would have said yes. Harry, do you feel like you don't want to live anymore? Yeah, that's exactly what I feel like. I would have said that. But nobody asked me that fucking question, which is why I worked in psych for as long as I did. And so they gave me Ativan and sent me home. That's a really great job. I'm not going to call it the hospital, but if you know the story and the location, you know what hospital it is. And it's not the one I used to work at, by the way. So just eating Ativan and sleeping, waking up and eating Ativan and sleeping. And then finally one day I woke up and I realized what the problem was. I was oh my gosh, I know exactly what I need to do now. And it was weird. It was this feeling of sick euphoria. My brain was so distorted, and it's creepy to even think back to this time and even talk to you about this, because it's disturbing. It is disturbing that I really was happy about this decision that I had made. I got up, I took a shower, I made dinner, I cleaned, I did my hair and I put makeup on and clean clothes. I went to the store. I came home because I realized that in my sick, distorted thought process, I knew that I was the common denominator to all these problems. Like everything that I ever, experienced that sucked, well, it was me, obviously. I was a problem. So if you just eliminate the problem, then there's no problem. And I was like, you know what? I bet my mom's in heaven, and I bet I'm going to go to heaven, and I'm going to see her, and she's going to be better, and she's going to be super mom again. So I was like, I'm out. So on July 17th, 2012, I woke up, I made coffee, kissed my boyfriend goodbye, he went to work. I did not. I just quit going to work too, which is very odd for me because I've had a job since I was 14. I know the importance of work. I have work ethic. My dad is the hardest working man on the face of this fucking earth. And he was like, oh, you got to get a job, like as soon as I could get a job. And it's because work is in his blood. Like work ethic is one of the biggest things to my dad. So I would never, not like, it's like, you don't miss school. Like he would kick my fucking ass if I ever skipped school. But like, if he heard that I wasn't going to like work, oh my God, like that was like an unforgivable sin. Like, so me not going to work just for like 2 whole weeks and not even doing like not giving a fuck. I gave no fucks. So 2 weeks I hadn't been to work. Anyway, I woke up, made coffee, kissed my boyfriend goodbye. He went to work. I didn't. And I put a very sharp ceramic kitchen knife, plunged it into my stomach. Yeah. So I don't remember much after that other than the police busting in my door that I had to pay for. And I barely remember the ambulance ride. I was in and out. And I was wheeled in the emergency room. And I remember they were cutting my clothes off me because they were prepping me for surgery. They had to, exploratory laparotomy to make sure, like, to see if they had to, like, sew something shut that I punctured or whatever. And I remember one of the surgeons leaning over me and he asked, is there anybody that we can call for you? And that is when all my lights came back on, and that Rock Bottom's basement dried right up, and the stairs were lit and had a red carpet on them, and the door was open at the top, right? Like, that is when all the lights came back on. And I was like, oh my God, my dad. My dad is going to get this phone call. God forbid my dad is going to have to bury me next to my fucking mom. What did my dad ever do to deserve this? It wasn't about me anymore. It was about what I was going to do to everyone that would get this call. My whole family. But it was my dad. And I like grabbed a hold of the surgeon's scrubs. And I was like, please call my dad. And I gave him the number somehow. And I told him where he worked and gave him the number. And it was 268-5000. I probably shouldn't say that on here, but whatever. Hey, you can call my dad at work. Just say hi, Dan. I don't think the switchboard would like that very much, but whatever. But I said, please call him and tell him I'm so sorry. And I love him. And I said, please save my life. And he's, and that's all I remember. They put the mask on, the gas over me, and I was out. And I woke up. Surprise! Obviously I did. But I woke up at 3 a.m. in the ICU, 26 staples in my stomach, and I was intubated. But I was alive. And I was alone, because you can't have, I had visitors, I'm sure. But, you can't have visitors in the ICU after certain times, and nobody is allowed in there at 3 o'clock in the morning. So it wasn't like nobody was there for me, but I was alone, and I was like, wow, I like really fucked this up. And that's kind of when I realized, like, no one is coming to save me, No one is going to come fix my life and make me happy. I have to figure out how to do that for myself. And so from that day on, I've had a long journey. It's been 10 years. This year is my 10-year anniversary of surviving that. And that is when I began my journey to my better self. We're all fucked up. Okay? Everyone. There's not one person that's not fucked up. And my story is any worse than anybody else's. Trauma is trauma. I don't care. But what if we could transform that trauma and that struggle into our superpower, into our strength? And while I know there's people who talk shit about me, I don't care. I know there's people who don't like me. I don't care. I know there's all kinds of relationship drama all over the place because of my blog I posted a year ago about my husband being a slut bag online. I don't care. Because I'm not there for these people. I'm not here for those people. I'm here for the people who know what it's like to lay on the bottom of that basement fucking floor and literally give up. And I'm here on this podcast and online for as long as I shall live, or as long as Facebook and Instagram and all those things live. And writing my books and sharing my truth and speaking and making everybody so fucking sick of me, because I need to help people not do what I did. And use the shit to build something amazing out of, to create a life they love to live. Do you know that I have literally, okay, so there are things that I don't have that I want, obviously. But I have everything I've ever wanted. Everything. I have my own home. I have a beautiful daughter. She's amazing. I have the best dog. I have the best of friends. I have the best job. My job, I can't even believe it's my job. Like, it's 3:30 in the morning I'm recording this. Because I just, I love to be up. I love to work. I love to do this. I love to create. I love to help. I love to share. And that's now my job. I have a pretty good fucking life now. And I'm thankful. Every day I wake up and my eyes open. And if you don't feel that way, it's okay. I understand. There are days I wake up and I'm not happy. I still struggle every day. I still am very sad sometimes. I still get very lonely. I'm still fucked up emotionally for sure. But I don't I don't see it as being broken. Lewis House at the Summit of Greatness was talking the first day at opening day about how nobody's broken. We're just bruised, right? And bruises heal, right? So I'm going to leave you guys with that. It doesn't matter what cards you've been dealt. It doesn't matter what your story was. It matters what you're going to make it and what you want it to be. Because if I'm not living proof of success and thriving instead of just surviving, I don't know what is going to resonate with you. I love you so much. Thank you so much for being here with me. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for subscribing and rating this 5 stars on everywhere you listen to it and sharing it with your friends. I am going to have all kinds of guests on here. I have great, huge dreams for this podcast. This is just the very beginning, and you are a big part of that. Never, ever, ever feel like you don't matter, because you do, and you are important. You are 1 in 400 trillion. There is a 1 in 400 trillion chance that you are going to be here on this earth. And if you don't think that's special, please reach out to me, because I assure you that it is. I love you guys, and I'll see you next time.